Hey everyone, my name is Matt. I'm the youth and family pastor at Cornerstone Church in Marshfield. I'm here today with the Cornerstone Connection, a daily devotional. So today, if you want to flip there with me, we're in the book of 2 Chronicles. We're going to be in chapter 25. And before we get there, there are things in life in which you just can't go halfway, right? I mean, you're either in or you're out. You're either all in or you're not in at all. I mean, I would think of just like marriage for one example. That is something that it's like you can't just be tiptoeing around. You have to be all in on marriage and on your marriage in order for it to work, in order for things to go well in your marriage. Does that mean it's to be perfect? Absolutely not. But it means that it will stand the test of time if you and your spouse are all in on your marriage. What else? Parenting, right? We have to be all in on parenting and raising our kids, right? Because even when they turn 18, even when they leave the house, we still have a role to play as parents. And even when they have their own marriage and they have their own kids, we still have a role to play as parents and perhaps as grandparents in the future. So we have to be all in. It's not about going halfway. And I bring this up because as we get into 2 Chronicles chapter 25, we're introduced to a new king of Judah, and his name is Amaziah. And 2 verses in, the Bible gives us a statement that basically tells us the rest of the story. You see, even though there's going to be some high points in Amaziah's life and in his leadership, ultimately it's going to come crashing down. Because when it came to following the Lord and obeying the Lord and making God number one in his life, Amaziah wasn't all in. Let me read for you. 2 Chronicles chapter 25, starting in verse 1. It says, Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Jehoiadan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not wholeheartedly. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not wholeheartedly. I just need to pause and say, that is not something I want written about me after my days here on earth are gone. Pastor Matt did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not wholeheartedly. He was a half-hearted follower of Jesus. That's not something I want to describe me. But this is something that describes Amaziah. And how do we see this half-hearted devotion by Amaziah? Well, from the beginning, we see Amaziah actually listening to God as God sends a prophet, a man of God, to come and give him counsel, give him wisdom about how he is supposed to lead in the military. And so as you continue to read 2 Chronicles chapter 25, Amaziah is trying to gather a bunch of men, a bunch of military fighting men that are going to be able to defend Judah and be able to fight and valiantly, and he's constructing a really strong army. And then he decides, well, I'm going to pay some money to get some more men. Well, he does that, and he gets a bunch of men to be on his side, but the man of God says, hey, Amaziah, the Lord says you should let those men go home. And even though you paid money for them, you should let them go home. And guess what? Amaziah listens. He's devoted to the Lord in that moment, and he obeys, and he lets those men go home, even though they are disgruntled. But then we get to verse 14. After Amaziah has led a military expedition in which they have slaughtered the Edomites, here's what happens next. Check out verse 14. It says, when Amaziah returned from slaughtering the Edomites, he brought back the gods of the people of Seir. He set them up as his own gods, bowed down to them, and burned sacrifices to them. And guess what? The anger of the Lord burned against Amaziah, and he sent a prophet to him who said, why do you consult this people's gods, which could not save their own people from your hand? So Amaziah just gets done destroying these people in a military expedition, and he decides to take their gods, even though his God has rescued them, and he takes their gods, sets them up in his home, his land, to worship them. And the prophet says, why in the world would you do that? Why would you entrust yourself to gods who couldn't save your enemy? Do you see the half-hearted devotion? Listening to God some of the time, but not all the time. And unfortunately, even though this prophet comes and questions Amaziah, Amaziah doesn't listen. And it's to his own demise. This is in verse 20. Amaziah, however, would not listen, for God so worked that he might hand them over to Jehoash, because they sought the gods of Edom. So Jehoash, king of Israel, attacked. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by Israel, and every man fled to his home. And as we conclude in 2 Chronicles chapter 25, Amaziah is captured, and then he is eventually sought and killed. So friends, are you going to be all in? When it comes to following God, and I ask myself the same question, are you in or are you out? God doesn't call us to walk with him on a fence and dabble in the world and dabble in following him and have half-hearted devotion. No, instead, God asks us to be all in, to obey him wholeheartedly, to follow him and abide in him as much as we possibly can and trust in him, because he is all in on being faithful to us. So dear friends, may I encourage you and myself to wholeheartedly follow and obey the one true God. Have a great day, friends. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.